Welcome to Podkey Daily News, your fast brief on power, markets, and security. A housing bill with huge bipartisan support is now hostage to a voting fight. Europe is actively reducing dependence on the U.S., and Ukraine's air defense gap is getting deadlier by the week. In Washington, the biggest practical domestic story is the housing bill standoff. The 21st Century Road to Housing Act cleared the Senate 85-5 and passed the House by a wide margin. It's built to increase supply by easing federal rules, expanding manufactured housing, refurbishing vacant properties, and offering mortgage help and zoning incentives. President Trump says he won't sign it unless Congress also passes the Save America Act, which would impose national voter ID, citizenship proof requirements, and tighter limits on mail voting. So a major housing package is now being used as leverage in a separate election fight. What matters next is whether Trump actually vetoes or simply does nothing. If he takes no action for 10 days while Congress stays in session, the bill can still become law. A very different kind of political intervention hit the World Cup. Trump personally called FIFA President Gianni Infantino to push for reversal of U.S. striker Folarin Balogun's red card suspension, and FIFA's disciplinary committee then suspended the one-game ban. That kind of reversal is essentially unheard of in the modern World Cup era. Belgium's federation filed an official complaint, and the core issue is straightforward. Critics say tournament integrity was undermined and normal appeals were bypassed. Across Europe, de-Americanization is shifting from rhetoric into procurement. Governments and institutions are cutting dependence on U.S. software like Teams and Office, investing in sovereign satellite communications so they are not exposed to Starlink risk, and pushing domestic defense platforms and long-range missile development. The drivers are cumulative: tariff threats, past ideas like seizing Greenland, and broader doubts about whether U.S. support is durable. There are now invitation-only European discussions about what a strategic divorce from the United States could look like. If that continues, the impact is not abstract. It hits U.S. tech vendors, traditional U.S. defense contractors, and the wider transatlantic security model. Turkey is trying to turn NATO relevance into business. At the summit, Ankara is highlighting its large standing army, Black Sea naval role, and domestic defense industry to win more European arms contracts. But that pitch is colliding with democratic backsliding at home, including arrests of journalists, comedians, and an opposition mayor. That makes Turkey more useful militarily, but harder for Europe to embrace politically and financially. Ukraine's immediate problem is interceptor scarcity. Recent Russian ballistic barrages included one reported attack with 23 missiles and, in some incidents, 0 interceptions. Officials say Patriot stocks are near exhaustion, which means cities are increasingly exposed. Russia has also changed tactics. Some attacks now skip the drone swarm setup and go straight to ballistic missile launches, sharply reducing warning time to seconds and making high-value targets harder to protect. The practical meaning is brutal. Delays in Allied deliveries translate directly into civilian deaths and infrastructure losses. Kyiv is expected to press again for more interceptors, but global supply is tight because other conflicts are drawing on the same stocks. At the same time, Ukraine is intensifying drone strikes on Crimea's energy and logistics hubs to squeeze fuel supply and weaken Russia's hold on the peninsula. The stated aim is military and logistical degradation while avoiding mass civilian casualties, and the political target is obvious. Crimea carries outsized symbolic weight for Putin. Separately, BBC Eye investigations identified about 195 detention sites across Russia and occupied Ukrainian territories where at least 16,000 civilians have been held or disappeared since 2014, with survivors describing systematic torture and sexual violence. Open-source investigators have been tracing alleged perpetrators through public data, images, and family links. That matters because it shows war crime networks can still be mapped even when states try to bury the digital trail. In Iran, the funeral displays after Khamenei's death were built around mass turnout, revenge slogans, and hardline messaging. Foreign Persian language media faced restrictions, and uncertainty around succession adds another layer of risk. For Washington and regional governments, this makes diplomacy harder because public pressure inside Iran is moving toward defiance, not flexibility. Sudan remains one of the most severe humanitarian crises in the world, and children are taking the hit. UNICEF says drone strikes on markets, schools, and hospitals in El Obeid killed at least 18 children and injured 17 more. Aid convoys keep getting blocked, forcing agencies to pull back and leaving displaced families without food, medicine, or shelter. In markets, OPEC Plus is raising output by about 188,000 barrels a day next month, and some shipment trackers showed flows jumping sharply in June. That points to a near-term surplus, but inventories are still historically low, and analysts think it could take 15 to 18 months to rebuild them. So any oil glut may be temporary. Meanwhile, Nasdaq 100 futures moved higher on renewed tech enthusiasm ahead of high-profile index additions and possible IPO activity. But the next check on that rally is the Fed. Investors are watching the minutes and any signal of hawkishness from new leadership. One structural market story to watch is the Texas Stock Exchange. Texi has started limited test trading and wants exchange-traded products by the third quarter and IPOs next year, with enough Wall Street backing to make it a credible challenger if it scales. Two quick business shifts with broad consumer impact. The semaglutide market is expanding from weekly injections into daily oral versions, with generics widening access in some countries. That opens a much larger weight loss market, but doctors are warning about nausea, vomiting, constipation, rare pancreatitis, and the risk of long-term dependency and cosmetic overuse. And in gaming, Microsoft is cutting more than 3,000 jobs in Xbox, spinning off 4 development studios and reviewing another. It's part of a wider post-pandemic reset after the industry overexpanded during the COVID boom. A few shorter items. Contemporary EVs are holding roughly 95% of original range after 5 years, which keeps weakening the old assumption that battery degradation is a deal breaker. Australia is weighing tougher reform of the Big Four after former EY graduates were charged with illegally accessing Prime Minister Anthony Albanese's banking details while working on a Commonwealth Bank contract. And China's Navy carried out a rare submarine-launched ballistic missile test into the Pacific, a clear reminder that Beijing's undersea nuclear strike capability is advancing even if officials try to downplay it. That's the brief for now. You're listening to Podkey Daily News. This episode was generated by Podkey. Create your own at podkey.fm.